And now joining us is a Sixers color analyst on Comcast SportsNet, and that is Alaa Abdelnaby. Alaa, it's Zach and Mike here on Temple's campus. Thanks for a few minutes, and how are you, my friend?
Very good, fellas. How you guys doing? Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming on, and we appreciate the few minutes today. I don't know if you saw this clip yet, but Michael Phelps last night was at a college basketball game, and they unveiled him to the crowd, and he was in his Speedo and wearing his gold medals, and he was distracting the free throw shooter, and the shooter who was at the line ended up missing 2 shots. You played at Duke where the Cameron Crazies are nuts. How much of a distraction really is that when you see a guy and you're at the free throw line and one of their opposing fans just goes crazy and doing some things at you?
Well, listen, I think it affects you as much as you let it affect you. In other words, when you get up to the free throw line, you're supposed to be just focused on the rim. But that being said, I think if Michael Phelps comes in there, I think it would throw you off initially. But listen, you always have the option to give the ball back to the official. You have the option of pausing and stepping off the line. You do have 10 seconds, so you do have time to gather yourself. But I did see it. I thought it was funny. The Arizona State coach is my point guard at Duke, Bobby Hurley, and I texted him this morning, and he just sent me back yeah, that was pretty cool. Bobby's not a man of a lot of words, but I'm sure it sounded like he enjoyed it. What's
the craziest thing that you've ever seen a Duke fan do to an opposing team?
Oh, gosh. I mean, where do you begin? There's tons of stuff. I mean, I've seen Duke fans throw sneakers when NC State was caught selling their sneakers. I've seen Duke fans throw pizza boxes when one of the opposing players got caught beating up a pizza man. So, I mean, there's a lot of different stuff. I mean, I'm talking about thousands of pizza boxes to the point where you've got to wait 10 minutes to pick up all the pizza boxes that are on the floor. That's just scratching the surface about, what I saw in my 4 years at Duke. Cameron's unique, but I do appreciate other people trying real hard.
No doubt about that. As we're talking to Alaa Abdelnaby, who joins us right now, Sixers play the Warriors tomorrow night at the Wells Fargo Center. That game will start at 5 p.m. You all know this. The Warriors are red hot. They're 42-4. They're on quest for an historic season. Only 36 games left. The best regular season in the history of the NBA were those 95-96 Bulls when they had a 72-10 record. Do you think the Warriors will surpass that, or are they going to fall a little bit short?
Well, listen, I don't think the number matters. I think all that really matters for them is that by the time that the season's over and they head into the playoffs, they've got the number 1 seed, they're healthy, and they're playing well. I think you can chase numbers. I think I laugh when people say that they're the greatest team of all time. I don't care if they win 75 games and pass the Bulls. It's all relative. It's all about who you're playing and what the league is like, what the landscape of the league is like. And I definitely think the league was a lot tougher and more experienced in deeper squads back then because, the fact that there were guys that didn't come right out of college and were 19, and now that dominates the league. When back then you had guys with experience, guys who knew how to play the game, grown men because they were in there longer. I laugh when people say that the Warriors would beat the Bulls. I think the Bulls would absolutely crush the Warriors because the Bulls defend, and they defended as good as I've seen any team defend in the last 25 years. When your best player, a guy like Michael Jordan, is a great defender and a willing defender and favors that end of the court, I think that's why he's still the greatest player in my mind that I've ever played against, and that team is a lot better than this Warriors team.
We're talking to a Sixers color commentator who calls the games alongside the illustrious Mark Zumoff, and that's Alaa Abdelnaby. And Alaa, I'm honestly very happy you said that because even though I'm 21, I happen to think that Bulls team, in theory, would beat this Warriors team. But to me, it's not much of a conversation because currently this Warriors team, everyone can still marvel at them and appreciate them, and people should also appreciate the Bulls team. But bringing it back to the current day, as people are still marveling at this Golden State team, there's 3-4 teams that are in the upper echelon of the NBA. Then there's a huge drop-off, and then there's other teams in a rebuilding phase. What's your take on Golden State and then the parity in the league? Because right now they seem like they're just so far head over heels the best team in the league.
Well, they're playing their best basketball right now. I don't know if they're built to be the best team in the league. I have the Spurs winning it all. I picked the Spurs at the beginning of the year, and I have, nothing I've seen is going to change my mind. I think we've seen them twice, the Sixers have, and that's a special team. And you add to it David West and Marcus Aldridge, that all of a sudden becomes a more experienced team. You've got two guys that do everything that they can, veteran guys, West and Aldridge, to help the team win. And they bring a unique set of skills as well. I mean, they're both tough. They both can shoot the jump shot. They both rebound. They're both like gritty players, and I think they're both relishing the opportunity in San Antonio. So I'm not convinced yet. But absolutely, what the Warriors have been doing right now, it's kind of like a video game, just not coming down and knocking down a ridiculous amount of threes. They look like they're having a lot of fun. There's no complacency from last year's championship, where guys are kind of resting on their laurels. They seem to just have picked up where they left off last June. So, listen, I'm not diminishing anything they've done. I just think it's going to be an interesting series if the Spurs and the Warriors do get to meet each other up in the Western Conference Finals. Man, is that going to be something. But, there's going to be a lot of games left to be played until then. I just hope both teams can stay healthy. Popovich is saving his minutes, so to speak, right now for his, veteran three. So they'll be ready to play come playoff time, in particular in June. So it's going to be interesting. But you're right, there is a huge drop-off. I think the Rockets are a disappointment. People expected them, after what they did last year, to play well. I think in the East, the Hawks are a disappointment because of winning 60 games last year. I think a lot of people, including myself, expected them to, kind of pick up again where they left off and build on last year, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So there is a drop-off. I think there's a pleasant surprises, but there's some drop-offs.
So you were saying the Spurs have the best chance, in your opinion, to take down the Warriors, and we saw what happened last week, and you're right, Popovich is resting some of his guys. Duncan didn't play in that game, but we saw the Spurs and Cavs both get blown out by the Warriors. If we were to get on that collision course and both teams remain healthy, and we do see the Warriors and the Spurs in that Western Conference Finals, what would be some of those major keys for the Spurs to take down the Warriors? Because to me, Alaa, I just think the Warriors are going to run away with this thing. I really think they're going to win the Finals, just seeing what they're doing so far this year.
Well, I think the first thing that they're going to do is what Cleveland tried to do last year with them for a little while, and were successful for maybe 2 games in that finals where they were physical with them. You've got to start putting, your arms on people and start pushing people around. You can't allow a guy like Steph Curry to just roam freely wherever he wants. If he wants to line up 2 feet behind the 3-point line, that's where you meet him. And I got to believe Greg Popovich knows that. He knows that as well as I do. So I think that there's going to be a heck of a game plan, and as long as you've got a guy like Tony Parker who can get in the lane and then initiate your offense as well as sometimes be your offense, I think you've got a really, really good chance. And the Spurs, they defend. They're going to be physical. They're going to knock down shots. I think they're a better jump shooting team now with West and Aldridge than they were before. I still haven't, again, I've watched and marveled at what the Warriors have done, and they seem to be playing at a high level. I just think the Spurs are just laying there in the weeds, waiting for the playoffs to come and then be ready to go.
Now, the physicality typically starts in the front court. You're aware of that, considering you're listed at 6'10" and played the forward position. Nerlens Noel and Jahlil Okafor are 2 young players for the Sixers team moving forward, but they rarely play on the court at the same time. Just a couple weeks ago on Martin Luther King Day, we saw the Sixers go up against the Knicks. That game went to overtime, and Brett Brown opted to stay with Nerlens over Jahlil. Why do you think that's the reason that they both don't play? Because I know that they're typically the same position, but couldn't you put one at the 4 and one at the 5 to just get more scoring prowess?
Yeah, but it's easier said than done, because I think we're talking about 2 guys, Nerlens and Jahlil, who both spent their entire career playing the 5 spot, where the 5 spot basically is you're anchored in the lane. You don't really leave the lane too often, and you block a lot of shots. And I think for Nerlens, when you ask him to be the 4, the way the 4 is played now in the NBA, the stretch 4, so to speak, you've got to go out on the court and you've got to find Kevin Love. You've got to find perimeter players that, can rebound and play inside, but they also line up around the 3. And that's something that Nerlens has never in his life done before. And that's, a huge transition because you're not doing it in college where you have time to adjust against, some average competition. You're doing it against the best players in the world, and that position is a tough position to ask Nerlens to go out and slide and move his feet. And then what it does, too, is when you're taking him 30 feet away from the basket, he doesn't get to block shots. He doesn't get to do what Nerlens does, what I like to call the Nerlens wall, where he defends and blocks shots. I've never seen a guy block as many shots of his own man than a guy like Nerlens. You're coming off of help, and you're blocking somebody else's man who drove the lane. But he blocks his own man shots. That is very hard to do. Your timing and your spring off the floor have to be ridiculous. And he's an exceptional defender. So I think that's what you lose when you have Jahlil in there, and then Nerlens has to go out and cover all over the three-point line. You lose that defensive presence that he gives you. And a guy like Jahlil, you cited the Martin Luther King Day game against the Knicks. The reason why he stayed out is because I think Brett Brown felt that unit being down 18 at one point is what got them back in the game. They were able to play with pace, get some points off of their defense, run, get some easy buckets. And I think that was what he saw as getting him back in the game, and he wanted to stay with it. It was working.
And just going into a little bit into the future, obviously the Sixers have three incredible big men, and you had all those draft picks for all those years and still many more to come. You have Nerlens Noel, Joel Embiid, who Brett Brown said on January 12th is moving in the positive direction, and Jahlil Okafor. That big question is which one of those big three are they going to trade away? And that's a decision for Sam Hinkie, Jerry Colangelo, and Brett Brown to make. If you had a preference, which one do you think would be shipped out of town?
Listen, I think it all depends on, how you're going to incorporate guys. I think if you're willing, the way it's set up with Brett Brown to run and play with pace, Nerlens is the guy because Nerlens can run, Nerlens is athletic, Nerlens will give you block shots. However, Jahlil is a guy who scores in his sleep, and he can give you 17 to 20 on any given night. So you can't ignore that because a scoring center is a unique commodity in the NBA. Especially somebody who does it the way Jahlil does, where he does it back to the basket, he puts the ball on the floor, he can shoot a jump shot. So he's a unique talent. And that's a decision that, Sam has to make. But at the same time, I'm sure he's going to consult with Brett. I'm sure he's going to talk to other people, Jerry Colangelo. But you can't see, with Joel coming back, all three of those guys coexisting, in particular, with the way Brett Brown wants to play, with pace, with getting up and down the floor.
No, here we are. The Sixers are still in the midst of a rebuild. How much longer is this rebuild going to go for before we just foil this whole plan and say, you know what, maybe it didn't work?
Listen, again, you're going to have to talk to Sam Hinkie about that. I think the Sixers fans have been patient so far, but I don't know how long that's going to last. I think there's a hunger for winning here, and I think at times they'll believe if this is the process, the path we need to go on to get there. But I think at times, people want to win now, and the thing I worry about individually, just as a guy who played on winning teams for the most part, I've been fortunate enough to have been part of a lot of winning programs, and that winning mentality just kind of seeps through you. You wonder if you're losing for so long, can you turn that off and on like a switch the following year when you come out and you say, well, okay, now we're supposed to win this year. We've got enough assets, so to speak, that we should start winning. Can you turn that off and on when guys have been, marred and losing, kind of blanketed in it, for a number of years? That's the only thing that worries me is, the personal psyche of people. Because, let's face it, if you're the butt of late-night jokes and people talk about your losing streak, players see that. Players know that, and they certainly don't want to be labeled that. But if you go through it for a long time, can you stop seeing yourself as that losing team? That's the question that I think remains still.
By the way, since we have you here, as we're talking to Alaa Abdelnaby, wrapping up with him, the Sixers color commentator, does a tremendous job in his first year on Comcast SportsNet with Mark Zumoff. You have Jahlil Okafor, who missed the last two games because of that illness. What's the latest on him and his health?
Well, listen, I missed the last game against Detroit because
Sure.
I had some college obligations as well. So you probably know more than I do. Than everything I've been reading. I think it's still a day-to-day thing. I would imagine, knowing Jahlil, that he's doing everything he can to be ready for tomorrow. They only come in here one time a year, and you want to play the best team in the league. So I would imagine Jahlil, if his body cooperates, hey, listen, we've all been sick, and we know how that is. Some days you wake up and you're feeling better, and then the next day you're not so much, and you take it day by day. So I think that's what they're doing. Obviously, he's got great care. They're doing everything that they can. We should all be so lucky when we get sick, because he's going to get the proper attention and the proper care and the hydration and all of that good stuff, like he should. As long as he's doing what he can, we can just keep our fingers crossed.
Before we let you run, in the Eastern Conference, you had the whole situation where David Blatt gets fired, and in comes Tyronn Lue, and now he's coaching the All-Star game. I'm not a big fan of All-Star games. I don't get how he's coaching the All-Star game, so I'm not going to get all in a fuss about that. But the big situation there is a lot of people are now saying LeBron James is a coach killer, and LeBron was adamant that he's never disrespected a coach in his life. And he just is very vocal because he has a tremendous basketball IQ, being one of the best players in the league that we've ever seen. What do you make of that whole situation where the Cavaliers got rid of David Blatt, especially when they were the best team in the Eastern Conference?
Well, listen, I think it just shows you two things. One, that's life in the NBA. Two, obviously the expectation level in Cleveland were very, very high. I don't know if they were attainable, but they're obviously, from the outside looking in, very, very high, and they weren't meeting them. I mean, that's why coaches get fired. And for whatever the reason, it doesn't matter. I think the bottom line is the perception from whoever's running the team, whoever's making a decision, was that they were not meeting their expectations, and the league is all about, hey, listen, we give you a really good point guard, we give you the best player in the world, we give you Kevin Love, we want you to win yesterday. Is that fair? I don't think so, but it's the NBA, and it's the world, that we live in, so, again, it is what it is. You feel for David Blatt. I mean, gosh, how could you not? The guy was doing, he gets you to the finals with practically nobody on his team after injuries. Then they come back and they've got a ton of injuries to begin the season. Then your point guard finally comes back and he's starting to get back in the rhythm. You're still in first place and the guy gets fired. That's the league.
Alaa, thanks so much. Best of luck for the rest of the first season. We appreciate a few minutes.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate it. Good luck with everything.